you do start internalising and you start asking some pretty heavy questions that you didn't even know you wanted to ask yourself. So it cracks you open. He wakes me up every morning at like 5:30 and asks for like Vegemite on toast. And I was like, this would be great, I could sleep in. And then while I was away, you just miss all these things. So yeah, the annoying stuff is the good stuff.
No better way to step in episode 9 than by having the adventurous Matt Allwood on the show. Matt's indigenous roots and growing up in the country gave him a deep appreciation and connection to the land. From leaving home at 12 to professional footballer, Matt had the skills, but it was a spotlight that brought out his wild side. The decision was made for him and his contract was terminated. Though through accountability and some extra time in New Zealand, he got himself back on track. He eventually changed career lanes and spent the next number of years supporting young Aboriginal boys, both on the East Coast and up in the Kimberley. During his time up north, he proved himself worthy to secure a spot on the TV show Alone, which ultimately confirmed what was most important in his life. His short return to footy landed him not only in hospital, but with the vertebrae being surgically removed and a cancer diagnosis. Matt's story is a testament to how one man's strength can bring you back from a place most couldn't even comprehend. I'll be sharing my reflections after the podcast, but until then, sit back and enjoy the adventures of Matt Allwood. Matty, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Let's take it back to the beginning. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a remote area of New South Wales on a cattle station, about an hour and a bit northwest of Scone.
What was that experience like?
Mate, it was unreal. Grew up on this 100,000 acre property, so grew up fishing, camping, hunting, riding horses, riding motorbikes at a young age. So, mate, I loved it. Loved it. Really cool, fun, wholesome upbringing out in the country.
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, so I've got 2 older siblings. I've got an older brother, he's 6 years older than me, and then my older sister, she's 12 years older than me. It's a bit of a gap between all of us.
How was it being the youngest, having the older siblings? Did they kind of show you the ropes, guide you on the land?
Yeah, to be honest, like in our childhood, we weren't that close when we were younger because I was that little brother that was like 6 years younger than, you know, I was probably outside the realm of the cool little brother to hang out with. So I wasn't really popular with my brother or sister so much when I was real young, but you know, like later years, like now we're all best mates. Like we call each other, God, nearly every day, between my sister and brother. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, just to paint the picture, like your parents, like where were they from? Were they always country crew? Is that why they chose to raise a family out that way?
Yeah. So my dad, he's a bushie through and through. Like he's a stockman, been on the country, on the land his whole life. So he's always been doing that. My mum, she's from the Northern Territory, up in a small Aboriginal community up there in Borroloola. So yeah, but I mean, full comparison. My mum left when I was at a young age. When I was about 7, my mum left. So when she left, I actually lost a lot of that connection to my Aboriginal culture, and you know we've connected since growing up, but not as much. You know, I've got a lot of people around me, a lot of family, a lot of people that I've got to keep in contact with. So I don't really have that much of a connection with my mother.
How was that experience, your mother leaving at 7 years old?
It was tough, but I mean, I say it's tough. It was probably tough in later years when I realised that the gravity of losing that connection to my Aboriginal culture, because my mum is that connection to my Aboriginal culture. When she left, I kind of lost that with it. But in terms of like missing her and all that sort of thing, you know, it was hard at the start because I think I was about 7 when she left. But you know, my old man's an absolute legend, and he pretty well single-handedly. You know, with my nan and grandpa, you know, they really put their hands up and, you know, helped raise me, my brother and my sister more than anybody, and my uncle for that matter as well. So, you know, when she left it was hard, but, you know, I had a lot of really, really positive family around me to help out and, yeah, fill in those gaps.
In those 7 years, did your mother teach you much about the Aboriginal culture?
No, so when before that age, like I don't remember much about it. I've been up to Borroloola a bit before that, before I was 7, but I don't remember it. See, so you know, I missed out on a lot of that. My brother remembers a lot more than I do, but I don't really remember too much about all that, to be honest.
So the country life's always been in your blood. And how was it through those 10 years? Was there much of a social life, or was it just very much focused on the country?
No, well, so when I was in primary school, the closest little school to us was a small little country public school, and there was about, God, from any time, there's about 6 to 12 kids that went to that school at any given time. So it was a very small primary school that I went to, and it was great. It was great fun. But then when I went to high school, I actually went to a boarding school. So I went to Farrer Memorial Agricultural High School in Tamworth, and I was a boarder there. So I lived there, and so I went from that little 6 to 12 kids at the school to over 1,000, which was a bit of an eye opener. But mate, I loved boarding school. It was honestly, like, I think back on boarding school as some of the fondest memories of my life. Like, it was great fun, just with your mates all the time, having a ball, and, you know, the people and staff and mentors that I had back at school was, you know, I'm so grateful for it, because they definitely helped shape me into the person that I am today.
Wow, that's incredible. And so was that year 7 when you went to boarding school?
Yeah, it was year 7 that I started boarding. So I think I was 12 going on 13 when I went. And
wow.
You can imagine any kid being 12 or 13 going to a boarding school. It's bloody difficult in that first little period, but, you know, once you get through that, it's honestly amazing. Like, you learn so much about yourself. You develop this independence and this capability of knowing that you can go and leave the nest, so to speak, and you're not too worried about if you think you can do it or not, because you've already gone and lived at school and been away from your family. So you kind of know, and, you know, that was a huge step for me once I did finish school. And, you know, I moved down to Canberra without knowing a single person straight after that when I was 18. I was actually 17. I wasn't even 18 when I moved down there. So, you know, it definitely helped me for a lot of things later on in life.
Wow. And so what's like the structure in boarding school? Would you go back every term? Was that in the school holidays and go catch your family?
Yes. So in a normal 10-week term, you'd normally, you know, you get your long weekends, and on your long weekends, they'd call them leave weekends. So you know, the whole school would shut down, kids would go back to families, or they'd go to friends' houses, and then in your school holidays, the school would shut down again and you'd go back to your family. So, at the time that we were living on that cattle station, when I first went to boarding school, my father he moved interstate for work up in northern Queensland. So I spent a lot of time in high school going back to the Central Coast with my sister and my nan and grandpa and uncle and all that sort of thing. So I spent a lot of time out there in the holidays during my time at school, as well as going out to, you know, friends' places and properties and all that sort of stuff out west as well.
So really from like the age of 12, you were really quite independent in between school and Central Coast and moving around. That seems like, yeah, quite an exciting life for a young fella.
Yeah, well, you would think so. And it was, but I mean, as you can imagine, any young fella that's got these free reins and can do anything that they think they can do because the parents aren't there, you start doing stupid shit, in which I was, you know, not exempt to. I did some stupid shit in school, and you know, I did a lot of stupid things in school, and I got to the point that I was actually pretty close to getting expelled there at one point. And I had a lot of great mentors at school, and there was one mentor that, you know, he helped me in a moment that I didn't even see myself going down a certain path. And he took the time to bloody take me through town, and he more or less, it was powerful moment. He took me through town, and he showed me 2 possibilities to where my future could go if I keep going down the path I'm going. And he basically said to me, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to end up down this certain path. I'll get expelled. I don't have my license. I've got no work experience, no real value. And he said, this is where that's where that'll take you. And he took me back to his place, introduced me to his wife and kids, and he said, you know, you can be in a place like this or better. You know, you got all this potential. Don't waste it. You know, so that was a big moment for me in school, and that moment actually kick-started me, or gave me a kick in the arse to really turn myself around and put some clear goals in place to where I wanted to go, opposed to where my life was going to go without me really, you know, knowing it. And from there, I you know, put some goals and some routines in place, and yeah, it actually was a bit of a blueprint that I used for my entire life, with setting goals around routine and structure based off that conversation that this fella had with me. Yeah.
Wow. And what age was that exactly?
I was about year 10 or 11, about that age. So I was at that point that I was probably just able to, if I was expelled, or asked to leave school or whatever it might be, I was probably at that age where it's just an awkward age. You know, like you'd be out, you'd probably have to try and find work, or do you go to another school and try and start and, you know, find new friends and all that sort of thing. So, it was a pivotal point for me. And, I definitely recognise today where my life could have gone had he not, you know, made the effort to help me out.
Yeah.
And that was just... Sorry.
You go.
I was just going to say, that was just one example of like an amazing person and a mentor at school. And there were so many. That's just one that, you know, it just comes to mind when I think about something that really turned me around from going down a bad path. Because there's so many people out there that do that sort of thing. And, you know, it only takes one moment to make a difference, I think. So it made a big difference for me.
Yeah, exactly right. Just that's somebody showing you that they also care about your future and your well-being and the choices you make.
Yeah. And I think when someone comes from a genuine place and they really give a shit about you and where you end up, and, you know, you feel it, and I felt it, and I think that connection, you know, it really got to me, and it definitely, it was, like I said, it was a pivotal point in my high school time that, you know, I owe a lot to.
Wow, that's incredible. And so after that kind of crystal ball moment, what were your goals? What did you choose to focus on?
Well, I had two goals, and they were very simple goals. My first goal was to become a famous NRL player, like every young bloke that plays footy in school. And my second goal was to finish year 12. And so, yeah, the things that I did around that to get to that point was just, I developed this routine in school. It was just a really basic routine. And I did that, and I surrounded myself with some positive things that I like doing. Like I've already mentioned, I love me fishing and hunting and camping. I just tried to do that stuff more than the bad stuff. And then I got into this routine, and it all kind of just fell into place for me after I did that. So I stopped getting these behavioural issues. I started playing more footy, more rep. And from there, you know, I graduated high school, not in a high academic level, mind you, but I did graduate, so I'm pretty happy about that. And and from there, you know, I progressively worked towards that goal of playing NRL, and I reached that goal, which was a pretty big achievement for me back in that time of my life, you know. So yeah, and I definitely, like I said, I owe it to that bloke that just pulled me up at the right time and showed me where I was going. So,
wow. Well, congratulations, man. Achieved both incredible goals.
Yeah. No, thanks, man. I was bloody stoked.
Unreal. So did the doors of professional footy open pretty quick for you then?
Yeah, reasonably. Like, as soon as I stopped getting suspended, because part of the issue was I was getting suspended all the time. So I wasn't, I mean, anybody out at this school would know there's colour levels, and if you got to be on a certain colour level to be able to go and represent the school, and it's like any behavioural policy that they have at schools. You've just got to be hitting a certain level to be able to represent the school, and I wasn't at that point. I was getting suspended so often that I was down on the bottom tier, so I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. And as soon as I got myself right, I was back up on just that medium good pace. And yeah, I was able to finally go and represent the school, and then I got into rep teams. And you know, it's a bit of a funny thing. I kind of, with footy, and anybody that knows me would know this, I do not follow footy. I've never followed NRL or any sport. I kind of attribute myself getting to that level as ignorance, a little bit, because I didn't realise how high of a bar I set, and I just was like, oh yeah, like I know people can do that, I'll do it. And I went through not really knowing that it was a bigger deal than it was, and I went through and I did all these things and I got through to that level. And then when I got there, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I did it. And, you know, I don't know, it was weird. Like I took it for granted big time. And, fell into a bit of a trap of ego there because of that as well. But yeah.
That's interesting. It's like the ignorance got you there, but then once you were there, then the ego kind of took over.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine, like, you know, I'm at this point when I'm playing NRL, I was a young 21-year-old. And look, I was no superstar by any means. I'm not claiming to be a superstar. I was just someone that was playing NRL, and I was on TV. I was getting recognised. I had some money in my pocket. And, you know, a young bloke, you think you're better than you are. You think you're bloody invincible as it is. And when all those things come into your sphere of bloody life, you know, it takes you to another level. And yeah, I got sucked into this culture after a while of partying, drinking, and went away from a lot of the things that got me there in the first place. So, you know, before I got to reach my goal of playing in NRL, I was doing all these things that were positive. You know, I was fishing, I was camping, I was hunting, I was hanging around with family and good friends and all that sort of thing. And when I started playing in NRL, I started getting this different type of attention that I thought was just part of the culture and part of the norm, to go partying and be an idiot and get as drunk as you can and just be an absolute menace. And yeah, so that's kind of where I was. It was a bit of an identity crisis of who I was at the time, I think, as well. But yeah, it caught up with me in the end, and yeah, it was a pretty big learning curve for me, but a good learning curve as well.
Well, since that you've been able to operate in that arena and that at that level, for anybody listening who doesn't know much about the professional sport level, like does much change from the amateur into the professional? Like, so it's still very much a party culture, and people in that level and up on that level still celebrate in similar ways?
So when I finally got my full-time contract with, you know, the Canberra Raiders at an NRL level, your training changes. So, you know, your normal work day will be going to the club at, it might be 7 or 8 in the morning, then you train for a couple of hours, you have lunch there, then you might have gym for a few hours in the afternoon, and then you've got physio, and you might have a video session to critique the upcoming game that you got. So you've got all these things that take in place of a normal work day that are all based around the professional standard of, you know, your sport. And that's kind of the level that I went to, or that is the level that I went to once I got to that point. In terms of the culture, I mean, there's different people and different players that all have different styles of what they do. And when I say I fell into the culture of it, I don't necessarily mean the footy club. I kind of mean a lot of people around the sphere of the footy club, like people that they might say they're your mates, and they might say they've got your best interest at heart, and, you know, they want to hang out with you because they see you on TV, and, you know, it's not real friendship, it's not real mates. You know, a lot of those people that I partied with back then, I've never heard from them since. So you just know that tells you everything you need to know about who your real mates are and who aren't your mates. So when all that happened, and I was going out on the party scene, I thought I was, like I said, 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and I fell into this egotistical thing to think I was bigger and better than I was, and I thought that was kind of who I had to be.
How did you navigate that then?
Well, I kind of didn't. I kind of just kept riding the wave of playing footy, partying, just doing stupid things. And I did that until the decision was made for me. And an off-field incident involving partying and drinking and, you know, all that sort of shit. It caught up with me, and I was called into the office there early in the week of the training week, and my contract was terminated effective immediately based on that. And it was a big shock to me at the time, because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But like I said, it was a super steep learning curve, and I fell into this real downward spiral of, you know, victimization, and I was blaming everybody else, and I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, I was everything under the sun that you could imagine, you know. And it took me a long time to really come to terms with what had happened. And man, I carried around this heavy weight on my shoulders of just, I had a chip on my shoulder about what had happened. And I came to terms with it after going on a trip to Darwin to see my brother and go barra fishing, just to try and get out on country and do something that, you know, I love me fishing. I knew that was something that's always grounded me in the past during hard times. And I went up there with my brother to catch a barra. And I remember sitting out on the riverbed, and I just had like a moment of clarity, like, man, I should have been out doing this stuff and not partying. I should have been. And then in that moment, I took accountability, and I was like, fuck, sorry for swearing. I was like, yeah, man, I should have been doing this. Like, the person that I was led to those results. And the minute I took accountability for what happened, I just felt that weight come off my shoulders, and I could finally start planning what I needed to do next to pull myself out of that hole that I'd dug for myself. And, that next chapter of my life in that professional footy career, I had to change it. And, that was a big lesson for me that I walked away with. And, I actively did try and change what had happened. Or not what had happened, but just learn from that experience so that it didn't happen again.
Wow, that's an incredible turnaround, and very powerful through accountability.
Yeah, it was funny. It was a funny moment. It wasn't a funny moment, but it was just, it's funny when the moments happen, because I had the shits with everybody before this, and then, like I said, I was out fishing, and I'm just sitting there, and I was like, fuck, why wasn't I out doing this? Like, I should have been out fishing and doing more of this positive stuff that got me there. Because, like, on my journey to get that contract and start playing NRL for the Raiders, I had this little routine that I had, and the routine was pretty basic, but, I barely drank. I didn't do anything stupid like that. And I did a lot of fishing and a lot of hunting and camping. I did a lot of these positive things around my routine that kept me out of trouble. And the minute I made it, I just stopped doing all those things. And that was a big thing that I recognised in that moment when I was fishing. Like, I wasn't doing it. And, had I been doing more positive things in place of these stupid party things, then my circumstance could have been a lot different. So,
beautiful reflection. So then what did you do after that?
So then after that, I had this contract with the New Zealand Warriors. So I moved to New Zealand, not really knowing anybody again, same sort of circumstances as when I went to Canberra. And I just thought, fresh start, I'll go back to the drawing board a little bit. I'll reinvent myself. I want to be a respectable person. I want to be a respected player on and off the field. I don't want to do that stuff again. I don't want to be that person that led down that pathway. So, I thought I'd get my routine back on track, because I recognised that routine was a huge thing that had attributed to me reaching my goals in the past. So, I went away and I went to New Zealand, and I fell into a good routine, and I surrounded myself with all this positivity around fishing and hunting and getting out on country as much as I could. I bought a kayak, and I'd be out there every spare second. I got out in the bloody bay fishing for snapper, and just trying to do real positive stuff around my around my professional and personal life, so that I didn't have a repeat of history. And I spent 3 years over in New Zealand, and I absolutely loved it. Like, amazing people, beautiful people in New Zealand, and the landscape and the lifestyle of fishing and outdoors. It's right up my alley. So I had an absolute ball while I was there. But the funny thing is, with all that said and done and falling into this routine to get back on the horse of being in the NRL system, I did play a few NRL games for the Warriors, but in that time I actually remained majority a Reggie player for the New South Wales Cup side, which I loved and I was grateful for, but it wasn't really my goal. My goal was to try and get back in that system as that regular, top tier NRL player. But it was, it again, like I try and think of everything as a bit of a learning curve. It was a good lesson that I learned, because even though I put all these things in place, I didn't reach that goal of being that regular NRL player. I was mostly Reggie's, but I learned a lot about myself, and I was playing some good footy and I was having fun, and I was way better off than had I never put these things in place, like professionally and personally. So it was a cool experience, and I did everything I could, and I had no regrets of my time over there and everything that I did to try and achieve that goal.
Wow. So that was 3 years. Was there any moment that you chose to, it finished for you, you chose to finish up?
Yeah. So it kind of came crashing to a halt in my last year there. I was playing over in Australia at the time, versus the Panthers on indigenous round, and I got a stray knee hit me in the back of the ribs, and it broke 3 ribs and punctured my lung, and it put the wind up me quite a bit. And with that injury, I had the decision. I was like, I've got to stop busting myself. Like I before that as well, I had a few injuries that throughout my time at New Zealand as well, but that one was just like the icing on the cake, and I was like, no, I'm done. I don't want to bust myself anymore. I want to start transitioning out and find something else that I can put passion into, and not end up hurting myself too badly.
So what did you do?
So after that injury, I moved back to Australia. I met a girl, met a woman, I should say, fell in love, the usual spiel. We got married, had kids, bought a house, and I found a job doing youth mentoring, which I found real passion in. It was something that I never really truly expected to get into, but I started doing this work with Aboriginal youth, and mate, it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. And like that person, that mentor that helped me out at my time at school, I felt that I could do something very similar to some of these young blokes as well. So I started doing that. It was an amazing opportunity, and it took me around New South Wales and took me as far as Western Australia, up in the Kimberley.
Really? So how long were you based doing this kind of work in New South for?
So I was in New South for, it's about 4 years, I think, or thereabouts. It's about, I'm terrible with numbers and maths. But I think it was about 4 years in New South Wales, and then 3 years up in the Kimberley as well. So a little bit of time in that space. And mate, loved it. And especially that time in the Kimberley. Like that, the time in the Kimberley is it holds so many fond memories. Just the on-country experiences that I was fortunate enough to be a part of, and really immerse myself in was unreal.
Wow. For a lot of people listening, the Kimberley is an incredibly remote, far away kind of land. Could you describe what life in the Kimberley looks like, and particularly with the work and the connections you made?
Yeah. So, I mean, life in the Kimberley for me was, it was very much practical based and getting out on country and going fishing and hunting. And a lot of the work that we did was with boys that were very, very culturally active in out on country. So we'd take boys out on country, and they'd be teaching us how to catch mud crabs and catch goannas and how to spear fish and all these sort of things, and telling us the stories of the land. And that was amazing. Having these feeds around a bushfire was it was amazing. It was such a cool experience.
Wow. And whereabouts were you based in the Kimberley for that experience?
So I was based in Broome, which is your one-stop shop in Broome, in the Kimberley.
But your work took you all over?
Yeah. So work took us all over. So based in Broome, but we went up to Derby, Fitzroy, Horse Creek, Kununurra, down south to Katherine and Port Hedland as well. So we did a lot of travelling, got to see these other communities and meet these other boys, and it was great. It was so much fun. It was such a rewarding gig.
Wow. And what was it like for you personally, had never been there before and going up for the first time and experiencing it? Was it anything like you'd imagined?
It was. I mean, I'd spent a little bit of time up in the Northern Territory, reconnecting with some of my family in previous years. So it was kind of similar to that. And my father lived up in far north Queensland for nearly 10 years as well. So it was a very similar layout to both of those places. So I kind of had a little idea of what it was like, but it's such a unique place itself. I don't think you could ever put it in a category as being the same as anything else. Like, it was such a beautiful, unique part of Australia that I'd encourage anybody to get up there and check it out, because it's beautiful, and beautiful people as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so the whole time in New South and in the Kimberley, you were working with youth?
Yes, the whole time. Yeah.
Wow. And so after the Kimberley experience, what did you choose to do then?
So in the last year that I was up in the Kimberley, I saw this opportunity come up through social media and through some family connections and things. And it was the opportunity to go on a reality TV show based on survival skills, based down in Tasmania. For those that might know what it's called, it's Alone. So I was on Alone season 3 in Australia, and got this opportunity to go down to Tasmania, which was a polar opposite place to Broome and to the Kimberley. Gone from 30 degrees to bloody -3 degrees, which was a good little comparison. But yes, I got this opportunity to go down to that, and being a bloke from growing up on a cattle station to being up in the Kimberley and having this experience with on-country hunting and gathering and all that sort of stuff. I thought I had a fair chance to do it, and I'm also pretty active with camping and being alone out in the bush and being away from family. So I thought that, man, this is a sure thing. Like, I'll go into this and blitz it, and it'll be an easy win.
So you said you noticed it was on social media, but I mean, what's the process like to even apply, and then that whole process within itself?
Well, the original interest, I've always been a big fan of the show. Like, in Australia, crossover in America and Canada, I love it. I think it's an amazing show, and it's so cool to see these people going out there and pushing themselves to the limits. I saw my brother. So my brother was on season 2, and I didn't know that he was on there until it got publicly announced, and it was on social media and on TV, and I was like, what the? That is my brother. That's Jason. And then after that, I was like, oh. And it's that old thing of like, something sparks out, and then you want to do it. And like, my brother did it, and I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. So I just put an application forward, sent through a little videotape of me doing some stupid stuff out on country, and I got an interview to go on the show, and yeah, the rest is history. They said, yeah, we'd love to have you come on, and I was like, oh shit, I've got to go out there now and do it. So yeah, it was honestly one of the coolest and most amazing experiences that I've ever been privy to be a part of.
So did you then confide in your brother, just kind of like, well, thanks for telling us, or just, what was your experience like? Was he able to share some knowledge?
Well, you'd bloody think so, but he didn't share a thing with me.
Really?
Yeah, I asked him, I said, what do you got for me? I said, you got any hints or tips or tricks? And he goes, I think it's better if you just find out for yourself. And I was like, so, but I mean, credit to him. I actually agree with what he said, because I think there's a lot of things that you can learn, and what I did learn being out in the bush, that you can't really prepare someone for. I think it's something that you experience yourself. So it's a difficult thing to try and prepare someone for, I think.
Yeah, well, I guess like we've all got an impression of alone until you're actually really truly alone.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that I definitely noticed is we've got so much, just like so many distractions in our lives, whether it's a phone or a magazine or, you know, I'm fiddling with a stupid Rubik's Cube right now just because. But we've got so many distractions that we just don't realise how often our mind is distracted. And when there's no distractions from, you know, social media, your phone, a book, a bloody Rubik's Cube, you do start internalising and you start asking some pretty heavy questions that you didn't even know you wanted to ask yourself. So it cracks you open. Like it's a weird experience, and anybody that is ever thinking about doing it, I would definitely recommend doing it just to see what your experience is like when you really and truly are alone.
Wow. So it sounds like in quite short succession, you'd applied, you got through, and then next thing you know, confirmation you're on the show.
Yeah, it was probably, I mean, from the start of the application process, it was probably like 6 months or so that,
Okay.
to the point that I was down there, maybe even a bit longer. It felt like forever because I put the application through, got accepted through to the next round, and they wanted some more video footage, and then they had to fly you over to do an interview in person to see how you'd go, and then you had to be able to, you know, see that you could talk to a camera while it's on, which was weird. But they did all these things to try and see, and just to see, and I'm presuming I think there's a lot of people that apply to go on it, so they want to get a good contrast of people, and yeah.
So they're using video footage that you've given them. There's no real like test on like putting you on country pre the show or pre being accepted.
Well, they want to know that you've got basic survival skills and basic knowledge of what to do.
Yeah.
And you've got to demonstrate that through some of the footage. And you also talk to a fellow by the name of Gordon Dedman, and he's a bushcraft expert and an expert in like survival things, all things survival in Australia. Like he's an absolute legend when it comes to knowing all this survival stuff. Anyway, before you go out onto the bush and before you even get the opportunity to be accepted, you do this little demo of starting a fire with him and giving a basic practical knowledge test to see that you know some basic stuff. So that was something that was pretty cool, and I think it just filters you out to make sure that, you know, you don't think that berry there is okay to eat and it's actually going to kill you, sort of thing.
And even though I'm sure you've obviously lit countless fires in your life, is it nerve-wracking? Like having a bloke who's such a guru in survival and you're going to light a fire in front of him and prove that...
Yeah, it actually was, because I love, like I said before, like I've never really watched footy or sport growing up. I've always watched outdoor stuff. I love my hunting, fishing, and old Gordon was actually someone that I've watched for a long time before. So I was a little bit starstruck when I met him, and I was like, oh, shit, it's Gordon. And I was like, I've got to perform here, and I was making sure I could try and get it going, and yeah, I got it going, but it started raining when I did it too, so I was like, oh God, this is going to be, I'm gonna stuff this up. But yeah, I got it going, so it was all right. Worked out.
Wow, unreal. So then you've received the news, you're on the show, and I mean, obviously, like what you've demonstrated in previous lives and previous times, you're obviously going for the win, right? So then what do? You have to just put your whole life on hold. You have to tick all the boxes and make sure everything's good for however long this series could potentially go for.
Yeah. You've got to make some big sacrifices to go on it. Like I had to give up my job and move the family back to New South Wales so that my wife and kids could stay with in-laws while I was away on this experience. And you know, it's I don't give enough credit to my wife, but it was just as big of a challenge for her during that time as well, because she's got a solo parent and be in a place that's not our home environment. So it was it was a massive task for her to do that as well, which I'm so grateful for. But yeah, man, like everything is put up on hold. Like you got to put your whole life on hold pretty much, and as long as you're there is as long as you're there. Like you could be there a day, you could be there 70 to 100 days, as some contestants have done in the past. So, you know, and everybody that goes onto the show they're going on it to win. Like everyone wants to win. Everyone's got the capability and they think they can do it, and they're there for the genuine reason of winning. And like myself, like I'm a competitive person coming from a footy background, and anybody that knows me, I hate losing, hate it. So, you don't want to get me on a ping pong table, let me tell you. But I hate losing, and I just had this attitude when I was going into it. I was like, man, I'm not gonna tap out. Like I'm competitive. I'm gonna go all the way. If it kills me, I'll bloody go. I'll just keep going. And yeah, it was a humbling experience, to say the least.
Wow. I'm just trying to imagine too, and obviously like it's very self-explanatory, it's alone, so there's no communication with your family as well. So then it's like saying goodbye to your partner, your loved ones, your children, and then your partner ultimately potentially not hearing from you for 100 days as well, right?
Well, potentially, yeah. Like if you're in there for that long, like you could be in there for God knows how long. And when you go in to that experience too, you've got this, you can sign this bit of paper. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be like disclosing this stuff, but I've got to be mindful. But they don't. If something happens in your family, like there's an option to sign a bit of paper to say you don't want to be informed of any information, even if death is involved. Like you don't want to know about anything that happens if there's a serious circumstance. And I had this mentality going in there. I was like, I'm going in it to win it. And I even said to my dad, I was like, if you die while I'm in there, I'm sorry, but I'm staying. Sounds terrible, but that's what I said to him. But because of that, and you don't have to sign it, but I signed it because I was like, I don't want any distractions. I'm going in it to win it. That actually played on my mind a lot, because when I was in there, I was like, shit, has something happened? Like, are my kids okay? Is my wife okay? There's a lot unanswered before I left. Like, there was a lot of things happening in the background, and I was, yeah. And as it turned out, I missed 2 funerals in that time that I was there.
Really?
Yeah, so
wow.
Wild.
What a hard decision to make. I mean, it's because it makes perfect sense logically, right? It's just like any outside distraction is going to disrupt what you're actually trying to achieve. But then when you're in there, knowing that you signed that piece of paper, then it kind of could, I imagine, easily create that what if.
Yeah, for sure. And like speaking of no distractions, I knew that because I'm a huge family man. I love my wife and kids, and I went as far as not to take a photo in of my family, because every contestant's got the opportunity to take a photo in. And I've seen it on shows before, like people will bring in a photo of their family and then they'll break down and they're going, oh, get out of here. And I opted not to do that, and I ended up bringing a photo of my dad's cat on the show. Just because my dad's an old hard-ass country man, like he's this old bushy, and I just knew that he'd be like, what the fuck have you got a photo of me cat for? And the thought of that just made me laugh, so I just had this little thing to make me laugh while I was out there, which it actually did. It made me smile many a time. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it still didn't help as much as I would have liked.
Wow, what a tactic.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you're out there, you're alone, but you have to document all of it. Like, and I know you said earlier that they taught you and they kind of ran through whether you can be comfortable on camera and whatnot. But when you're out there alone, are you conscious? You're like, oh, I got to go set the cameras up over here. I got to go do this. Was that enjoyable, or did that or was that uncomfortable to do, even though you're alone?
It was an interesting part of what we had to do. So, I mean, before you go in there, there's a boot camp that you do before you go out on the bush, and a very large section of that is learning how to use the cameras. So they teach you how to use these made cameras, how to set them up, and every single thing that you do on any day has to be recorded, and you've got to have your audio mic all set up, and you've got to have your videos all done, and make sure just got to make sure it's all set up properly and record everything above all, because it's a show at the end of the day. So as much as, it probably makes it that little bit harder because you're trying to survive on the land and off the bush. But on top of that, you're trying to film it, and it definitely makes it harder. But at the same time, it's also a good distraction because you're doing something else to keep your brain and your mind occupied. So you can see it both ways. It is a bit of a distraction, but at the same time, I think it was a good distraction.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear, because I imagine if you're trying to get focused, and then if it's obviously not natural, then it can become, I imagine, would just be frustrating. So that's
Yeah.
great. That's a cool distraction. And so walk us through. So you dropped in Tassie. The show's beginning. Like, what was that feeling like? You're like, all right, let's go.
Well, yeah, I kept waiting for it to hit me. I remember getting dropped off on the shore, and there's a common term that people use when they get dropped off on the bush, and they call it drop shot. Drop shot, is that it? I think that's it. Anyway, people get dropped off and they're like, start panicking, and it hits them that they're out and doing this. I never really got that. I was just really excited to be there, and it felt to me in the first couple of days that I was just camping and I forgot to bring food, which has happened before. So that was kind of like where my mind was early on. And I had all these things that, I had all these little projects and things that I wanted to do, and I was just having so much fun with it, and just trying to be a bit of a clown and just make myself laugh, because, why not? So, I was having a great time until I wasn't, obviously.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was that threshold? So you were in, did it feel like a bit of a flick of the switch? Like, as you said, you were having a good time and then you just weren't, or was it a transition?
Oh, it was a little bit of a transition, but there was a key point or a key moment that it really hit me, and it was on night 9. So I was out fishing at night, and I caught my first eel. And day 10, because I didn't, it was too late in the night to get a fire going and worry about it. And I was like, I'll cook it up in the morning. So I put it up in my little shelter above my head, so that if any possums or cats or quolls or anything came in, I could bloody belt it on the head if it came in. And next morning on day 10, get the fire going and get some water in there, and I put the eel, and one of my items that I brought in was a salt wad. And so I'm cracking the salt on this bloody eel, and I'm getting it all ready, and I cook it up, man, and I can smell it, and my mouth's salivating. It was actually... Anyway, I get this eel, and I had the first bite, and I'm like, man, I'm doing it. I'm killing it. And in that moment, I was like, yeah, man, like, I've done everything. I'm doing it. Like, I've got my shelter, I've got fire, I've got water. I have now got food. And before that time, I'd been foraging. So every day I'd been eating, but I'd finally gotten that protein. And then I was like, yeah, man, I'm good. Like, I'm going to last. I'm going to be here 70 days. And then in the moment of saying, like, I'm going to be here 70 days, I was like, shit, I'm going to be here 70 days. And then it was a little bit like a reality switch hit me, and I was like, shit, like, I won't see the kids for 70 days. Like, shit. And from day 10 for the next week, because I was there for a good 6 days after that, I tossed and turned with how I was feeling, and I was like, no, I've got to let this protein hit me. Because I thought maybe I'm just in a bit of a chemical imbalance of being a bit malnutrition, and this protein might just help boost my positive endorphins, and it might switch and I'll be good and happy again, and not be thinking so much about family and missing them and being all depressive and sad and mopey. And on day 16, I actually ate eel every day from day 10 to 16, and I just kept getting worse. Even though I was eating every day, I just felt like shit. And to the film crew's credit, they did not make me to be a big sook. But man, I was crying like nearly every day from day 10 to day 16. I was just rattled. It rattled me, because I was like, I don't know what to do. And I tapped out on day 16, because it just got too much for me, being away from the family and just wondering how they are, and knowing that I wasn't there for them. And my daughter was only 1. No, she wasn't even 1 at this time. She wasn't even 1. My son was only bloody 3. So I had all these, it just flooded me in a big way. And day 16, I decided to tap it out, and I was really worried if I'd regret it or not. And I've never regretted it since. And like I said, I think it's one of the biggest moments of humbling myself and really understanding what is really important in life. And for me, staying out there 70 days or longer of what it would have taken to win that competition didn't feel very successful when it was at the cost of being away from my kids and family and missing those first moments with my children. And, you know, I think for me, a big takeaway from that was, you know, success and what really matters could be found a bit closer to home. So I walked away from that being a lot more appreciative of the things I had, and especially because when you're out there and everything's stripped away, as much as I love the experience of being out there, you know, we take so much for granted. Like, man, I got a roof over my head, I got bloody electricity with lights, you know, you got clean drinking water that comes out of the taps, you got food on the table, and I've got loved ones around me, which is, you know, one of the best things that any of us can ask for in life. So walking away and really appreciating all that a lot more was a huge takeaway that I didn't really expect to get from that experience, but I'm so grateful that I could.
Wow, that's so beautiful, man. Well, that's incredibly beautiful. It's wonderful to hear that something so humbling can really shift your perspective and offer deeper value to exactly what you already had in your life. And how was that experience when you got to see the family again?
Mate, it was amazing. I remember, because I was down in Tasmania, obviously, and got dropped at the airport and got flown back up to Sydney, and my wife and kids were there waiting at the arrivals bay, and it was beautiful. And my little daughter, because she wasn't even one yet, she didn't have teeth when I went in. And this is how quick everything happened. She didn't have teeth and she couldn't walk. And when I came out and I seen her at the airport, she was walking and she had like all these teeth. And I was like, man, I missed the first steps of my daughter, which was, you know, it's a hard thing. And a lot of people obviously are going to miss their first moments of their kids' life, like first moments like that. But it just really brought home that I made the right decision to come back and be more present and a part of, you know, my kids' lives rather than being away from them any longer than I needed to be. So wow. Yeah, it was unreal being back.
Incredible. And so after this experience, now life has shifted back to New South Wales, and then what evolved from there?
Well, the first thing that we did when I got back out, we had this old family caravan in the family, and it's an old retro 1965 Olympic fiberglass job, and it's an absolute beast. It's a weapon. But I said to my wife that we should renovate it, get it more up to scratch with what we want to do, and let's go and do some fun family things. Because I was like, I've been away, like I want to go and do stuff with all of you guys. So we renovated this caravan for a couple of weeks, and then took the caravan for a couple more weeks after that, and just had all this amazing family time. And then after all that, obviously got back into the swing of work and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it was good to be home and just good to be back into the swing of it. And you know, one thing that I remember thinking while I was out on the bush was just taking little moments for granted with the kids. And my kids, like my son especially, he could be so annoying sometimes. And he'd wake up in the mornings, like before going in, and I was like, man, I'm going to enjoy getting the sleep in, because he wakes me up every morning at like 5:30 and asks for like Vegemite on toast. And I was like, this would be great, I can sleep in. And then while I was away, like you just miss all these things. So yeah, the annoying stuff is the good stuff.
Wow, what a beautiful little mantra as well. The annoying stuff's the good stuff. And what a contrast, right? From literally being as alone as one human being possibly can be, to then the complete shift and having ultimate family time in a caravan.
Yeah, it was unreal. Yeah, it was real special.
So yeah, after the nice family reconnection, the caravan trips and all the quality time, did you find yourself some work? Like what happened with the flow being back in New South Wales?
Yeah, man. So I got back into the swing of things. I kind of picked up where I left off, and I got back into the Aboriginal youth work in that space, and reconnected with some old mates, and you know, got back into it was a bit of a slice of life that we had before we moved to Broome. So we kind of picked up in that sense and started doing all that, and yeah, it was good. You know, we just just living life, getting back into it, adjusting to life from being up in the beautiful Kimberley. It was a hard adjustment because we loved it up there. Obviously, it's beautiful. So yeah, we just got back into that, and it's life.
Beautiful. And so having your groove back, and they said readjusting from a very unique place such as the Kimberley. But then how was life unfolding? You're enjoying the work you're doing again, working with the kids back in New South Wales. How did it really all unfold?
Yeah. So it was it was great. It was just like it was before. You get all these amazing kids that you're starting to work with again, and all these amazing staff and people, and you're making those connections back with community and all that. So it's a fun space to work in, and it's a dynamic, forever moving, changing, place to be.
So it was good to be back. Great reconnecting with friends, family, things like that. And then I remember you sharing with me a moment in time where things kind of shifted again. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So it was in 2024. I decided to dust off the cobwebs off my footy boots and start playing a bit of local footy again, for the social side and a bit of fitness as well. I haven't played since I moved to the Kimberley, and now I was back in New South Wales. I thought, why not? I'll get back into it, have a bit of fun, and get back out there and meet some people again and do all that. And I was excited. I went out there and got into it, and I made a tackle that was no different than any other tackle that I've made 1,000 times before. But this particular tackle, I dropped like a sack of shit, and I found myself on the ground, and I ended up having a bit more damage than first thought. Yeah.
And so what you've hit the ground and you're lying there, did you kind of know instantly that something was up, or?
No, it was real funny because, funny of a bad situation. I went down on the ground and I had this burning sensation in the centre of my back, and I couldn't move my arms or my legs without severe pain. And I thought at that time that I had jarred my back or done something like that, and I thought I've done a slip disc or I've done a nerve or something like that, because I still had movement in my toes and feet and fingers and all that sort of thing, but I couldn't move them without pain, and I had all this adrenaline going through me, so I didn't really understand, I didn't really understand or think it was going to be as bad as it was. And from the footy field, I was taken in an ambulance with a neck brace on and on a spinal board back to the hospital, where after a few scans, a few hours later, they told me that I had severely fractured my T8 vertebrae, and it was done in such a way and with a fair amount of damage that it needed to be surgically removed. So that was a tough pill to swallow at the time, and I didn't really know how to take it, but it hit home. It hit home pretty hard because I'm an active person, and the first thing I thought of was, and a family person, the first thing I thought of was my kids, and first thing I thought was I'm not going to be able to kick a ball with my kids again or pick them up and give them a cuddle, and that broke my heart thinking about that. And I stayed in hospital for, in that with a neck brace on and not being able to move for about a week before they did the surgery. And I underwent this bloody horrible 9-hour surgery, and I just remember waking up in the most hectic pain that I could ever experience. I can't even fathom how much pain I was in, but I remember just being in so much pain. I woke up and I just instantly got my head like that and looked down at my feet, and I wiggled my toes or tried to move my feet. I could see my toes still under the shit, and I was like, I'm on here, I'll be right. And then the next thing I remember, I woke up in the room. It must have been a few hours later, and they put me up for a few pain meds, and yeah. And then the journey of rehab and rest and all that sort of thing started.
I mean, even just so that moment before surgery, I mean, was it running through your mind there's a possibility that it might actually not work out the way that they hoped?
Yeah, well, the first thing I said to the doctor was, well, when they told me this, I was like, am I going to be able to walk again? And they said in their little doctory way, as they do, we don't know. We're hopeful, but we just don't know until you've had the surgery. We don't want to say yes or no until it's done. So there was uncertainty before it went in, and I never really believed that I would, a bit naive, I never really truly believed that I would lose the capability to walk. Just because I couldn't imagine it, you can't imagine what you don't know, and I didn't know, or I couldn't imagine what it was like to not be able to walk or feel my feet or toes or anything like that. So, after I came out of that surgery and I looked at my toes, I could see that I could feel them and move them, and then I felt like a little sigh of relief in that moment, just knowing that I'm going to have some positive outcomes out of this, and I've just got to do the best I can before I can.
What a personal cliffhanging moment, man, going in and then knowing that when you come back out, you might not actually ever be able to walk again.
Yeah, it was. It was news that I never expected to hear. Like I said, I expected them to say, like, oh, you've got some muscular damage, or you've got a slipped disc, or you've got a bit of, you're pinching a nerve or something like that. But yeah, for them to say that I had to go through this whole procedure and get that vertebrae completely removed, and I didn't think it would ever happen.
I mean, that would have to be the absolute last case scenario, is taking out somebody's vertebrae, right?
Well, that's what I said. I was like, surely, what are you taking that out for? Don't I need it? Well, the good thing is I'm 3 foot taller now and I can slam dunk, so that's the plus.
Yeah, it's all worked out well. Wow. Yeah. So the surgery is complete. You're lying in the bed. You're obviously like, all right, how does one process what's just happened and ultimately what's to come?
Well, in the rest of the time that I spent in hospital, which was a bit over a month, I was in horrific pain from that surgery, because what they did, they got 2 rods and they basically held up my spine and drilled into either vertebrae above and below where they took it out, and they put like a little spacer in between. So it's a fair procedure, and you can imagine the amount of digging and whatever they do in the back. I could feel every bit of it, and even with the pain meds that I was on. So it was a painful, I can't even fathom the amount of pain that it caused me at that time when I was in hospital. But the mindset was, I've just got to take it one day at a time and just take it one step at a time, metaphorically and physically, once I could start walking again. And it took a whole week after that surgery that I was able to get myself out of bed. And I think that I remember the first time they leaned me up, it took me probably like 45 minutes, I reckon. But in those hospital beds, they've got the little buzzers where they tilt you up like that, and they can adjust your body and whatnot. Well, even when they tilted me up like that, I still couldn't move anything because I was in so much pain. So I had to get like 2 or 3 nurses to like shuffle me about an inch at a time to just get me around so I was on the edge of the bed. And I had to do that for ages until I was able to put weight on my feet again and, have a walker frame and people around me to help me in that next step of actually walking again. So it was crazy. It was a crazy experience, and
Wow.
It was difficult, mentally and physically, obviously.
How did you process that? I mean, it's like I imagine you could see some improvements, small improvements each and every day, but just being in so much physical pain and having so much of your mobility restricted. I mean, what was the mental space like?
Yeah, look, it was. I definitely struggled a lot at that time between first being told that I'd damaged my back and having the surgery, and then having um, this new process of rehab and trying to walk, and like I said, like I couldn't even sit up or do anything like that, and I couldn't. So it was, and the progress was so small and so minuscule for those first few weeks that it was very mentally hard, and I broke down so many times just because I couldn't see the progress, and I had to keep reminding myself that it's very early. It's so yeah, it was difficult, and I was very lucky that I had family and loved ones and a lot of people that were wanting to come around and visit me. So, my wife and my sister and my brother and my dad especially, they were all there like every day from the minute the visiting hours were open till the minute they were closed. And my old man, bless him, he's such a legend. He slept in a hospital bed for the first few nights after my surgery because I was in so much pain that I couldn't even talk or express what I needed. And I struggled to breathe with the pain, and it hurt. So he stayed there for the first couple of days in a little horrible hospital seat and just stayed there and helped me, and made sure I had water to sip on through a straw, and he bloody hand fed me every day. So, it was, I wouldn't have got through it the way I did without my family being around there, and my wife and my sister, and especially my old man. Yeah,
Wow,
pretty lucky to have them for sure.
that's incredible, man. What a beautiful act of love from your father and family.
Yeah. No, they're legends. Yeah, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so this period you said lasted for a month?
I was in hospital at this point for approximately a month, and at that time it was about that week after I had that surgery that I started taking a few steps out of bed, and it started from about 2 or 3 steps to being able to walk at the end of that time a few hundred metres up and down the hospital halls. And I was, I mentioned before with the sport and, my little blueprint to getting through things, I had a process of knowing what my goal was, making a routine that worked towards that goal, and then just trying to be as positive as I could to reach whatever I was doing. So I fell into this routine of getting up every morning, and I'd scull a heap of water to try and get as much bloody liquid and hydration through me, and then I'd get up and get the nurses to help me, and then I'd be shuffling on my little walker throughout the hospital for ages. And I did that every day, and I'd try and just beat where I went last time. So first day I'd walk to the edge of me, edge of my bed, and the next day I was like, I've got to get further than that. And I just tried to progressively work towards this rehab to be a bit competitive with myself and see real difference every day. And whether it was a few steps more than what I did the day before, that's how I kind of felt that I was winning this little battle, so to speak. And as much as it was physically tough, man, the mental strain, it was hectic. Like being there every night by yourself, and when you're in pain and you can't even bloody change the TV or anything like that, it makes it hard. So I really appreciated all the times that my family was there to help, and which they were there every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And so you've made all this progress. You've literally seen yourself walk further and achieve more each and every day. What's it like when you get to the moment they tell you can go home?
Well, funny. So on the very last day that I'm in hospital, I'm sitting there on the edge of the bed, and my wife's got my bag all packed. And mate, it's the first time that I'm properly like, I'm smiling ear to ear, like I'm fucking stoked I'm getting out of this place, because I'm sick of the hospital food. I'm sick of being in this little dingy room. I want to be home with my family, and continue my rehab back there. So I'm super excited, and my wife's happy with it. Is over the moon. The doctor walks in as I'm going to give the discharge papers, and he proceeds to tell us that they just got the biopsy results back from the vertebrae that they extracted. And he goes on to tell us that it's come back to say that I've got this blood and bone type of cancer that's come up in the vertebrae. I'm going to need to stay in hospital a bit longer. So yeah, it was tough because it was on the day that I was leaving. I was so excited, and then just to have it stripped away and to be told that I've got a blood and bone cancer, but they don't know the severity of. It was something that I honestly never expected to hear, and it was something that honestly took me by surprise, because I'd just gotten over this first hurdle of potentially not being able to walk again, to having the surgery, to a few steps out of the bed to a few hundred metres, and I'm making progress and some positive strides, and now being told that I've got cancer, and it's a blood and bone cancer, and I'm going to need to stay in hospital. It rattled me, and it was after that news, and being told I had to stay in hospital, I fell into one of the deepest, darkest depression that I've ever experienced in my life. And it was so much so that I mentioned this when we were talking on the phone earlier, that I experienced this feeling that I could see or experience or see, physically see these emotions that I was having, and the best way I could explain it was like I was this person just suspended by strings, and I was already holding on by a thread of these strings, and in the moment of hearing that news, it just felt like these strings were cut and I was just free falling, and I just had this overwhelming sense of despair and thinking that, shit, I'm not even going to be able to see the kids grow up now. Like I'm gonna bloody, I'm dying. Like that's where my head went. Like I genuinely thought that I was dying, and I unpacked my bags and stayed there, and I was just like sort of emotionless after that news. I didn't cry. I didn't really know how to feel or how to express what I was feeling inside, and like I said, I fell into this deep hole of sadness, and it stayed with me for the next days. And I knew at that time how I felt was not good, and the thoughts that I was having was not productive, and it wasn't going to help me the way I was feeling, but I just couldn't escape it either. And even though I knew logically that I needed to do something about it, emotionally it was just too strong for me to do anything about it. But what I did do was I tried to fall back into my little blueprint of like reaching my goal and falling into routine. And coming from a sporting background, I recognised that the physical exercise is great for endorphins and getting that happy feeling. So I tried to really fall into this routine of just what I was doing before with my rehab and getting up every day and walking. But what I did add to that was I'd get up in the morning, I'd drink heaps of water and fluid and try and be healthy, and I'd get on my little walker and I'd walk down the hospital hallway, and I'd make my way to the chapel every morning, and I'd pray. I wasn't a praying man before, but I was a praying man during this. And I did that every day, and then on this one day in particular, I was walking through and doing my usual little routine, and just in this like downward spiral of darkness. I walked past same wing of through the hospital that I've always walked past, but on this one day I just took more notice, and I noticed the cancer unit with the kids and the families and that, and something hit me when I seen that, and it just, I felt so selfish and so stupid because as soon as I looked over and I saw some of these families in there, I was like, man, they've got it so much worse than me. And then as soon as I saw that and recognised that, I started looking around and I just started seeing so many people that are worse off than me. And then in that moment, I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I kind of felt like the strings had been reattached in a sense, and I started to acknowledge, like, you know, I'm here, I'm still capable to bloody talk to my kids and have meaningful conversations. Like, it's me, it's not my kids in this situation, it's not my wife. Like I'm good, I've got this, you know, like I'll be sweet, I can push through. At the very least, I can control how I act around people and be a bit more present and just control what I can. And then in that moment, I felt like I pulled myself out of it, and I just really tried to immerse myself around my family and my kids and everybody that visited me. And, you know, I talked a bit more about how I was feeling and the things that were going on in my head. And, you know, through the support and comfort and talking to my wife and everybody, I felt like it brought me back from how I was feeling. And yeah, through that perspective mind shift of how I felt to just how I was feeling now, it completely changed my outlook on the situation. And, you know, I was able to get through that part of that little chapter, you know, with a smile on my face, opposed to, you know, in this downward spiral of despair and sadness. So it was a huge pivotal moment for me at that hospital when that happened to me. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it either. Like, it still wasn't an easy part. Like, I didn't just have this moment, then I was like, oh sweet, I'm happy. Like, it was still difficult, but I could acknowledge that it could be bloody worse. And in that moment, I was able to, you know, just pull myself together a bit and move on and get back into it.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like a very conscious reattachment, as you describe.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. And I mean, the weirdest thing about it, I've never experienced it before or since, was that phenomenon of just Nelly being able to see my emotions. It sounds weird, I know, but yeah, with the strings, I don't know, it was just a weird little phenomenon that I had happen.
And as you said, like, it was a complete perspective shift.
Yeah, massively. And as soon as my perspective shifted and I realised that, you know, what I'm going through is obviously bad and I've got my own demons, like, it could be worse, and I'm just going to be grateful for what I've got. You know, like, I've got my family visiting every day, you know, my kids are here coming to support me, my dad, my sister, my brother, you know, my cousins are home, like, everyone was coming in. So, you know, I just had to be grateful for what I had and do what I could while I could with everybody that was there, you know. So yeah, and that, yeah, like I said, that perspective mind shift just got me out of that hole.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you then chose to see the glass half full or half empty. It's like you're looking at what you already had and the gratitude with everything that was already available and existing within your life.
Yeah. Well, you know, a big thing that I often think about is, you know, how much airtime I want to give something, you know, in my own head. Like, I think about it a lot since that. Like, if I think about something that's shit that's happening to me and I start thinking about it all the time, like, yeah, I'll start going down that spiral again. And it's not to say that it's not there and I'm ignoring it. It's just, I'd rather focus on things that are more positive and things that bring me joy and, you know, and value. If I was to sit here all the time and just focus on all the bad things that have happened to me, like, you know, I'd pull myself down in that bloody hole every day. But, you know, I think I've got to just focus on what I can and just be grateful for what I've got and do what I can while I can with the people that I love, which is what I'm actively always trying to do now.
Beautiful words, my man. Beautiful words. So after this, say, reconnection to self and the agency, the choice that you're making now within this perspective shift? Like, what happened in terms of the timeline? Were you still in hospital? Did you have to stay a little longer? Results from the doctor?
I had to stay in hospital for, it was probably a good part of another week after that diagnosis. And then, the progression from there was going to see, a blood specialist, hematologist, cancer specialist, and I subsequently had to get radiation therapy on that part of my back where that cancer was. And and then from there, like the type of cancer or the type of, disease that I had back then with that cancer, it was an isolated pocket that they treated, and they were hoping that it would isolate and just stay dormant in that spot. And given the nature of like the blood and bone cancers, and the one that I had or I've got, it's something that you've always got to be monitored, and it's there, it's there forever now. So I've got to always monitor it and keep it in check, and I've got to get my PET scans and blood scans, and I've got to actively get, bone marrow biopsies and things like that just to see if it's there, and if it's coming back, I've got to get treatment and all those sort of things. But, it's a management process rather than a cure. So I've just got to manage it, do what I can with all that information and process of treatment.
So now you were talking, obviously you said it's now a manageable thing going through that process, like it's something you're living with.
So after the hospital and being diagnosed and going through that first round of radiation cancer treatment, I run that little bell getting out of there, and I was pretty, I'll manifest this shit not coming back, and I'm just going to say it's done. And I rang that bell of the last treatment of radiation cancer treatment, whatever it is, and a few months later and up until pretty recently, I've had to keep getting these blood checks and scans and all that sort of thing to see if it's coming back. And unfortunately, it has come back to the next level of what it is. And I had the recent diagnosis of that. But as bad as that is, it's something that was kind of expected given the nature of that first one that we got, or the first cancer that I got. And they said it's pretty common that it'll come back and rear its head as this other type of cancer, which, so, it's not good, and it's not the end of the world either. And I think back to that moment that I had in hospital with, the perspective and just saying that shit could be a lot worse. I don't feel any different than what I did yesterday or the day before I got this new cancer diagnosis. I'm still me. I've still got to do what I'm doing every day, and I've got to, actively show up for my wife and my kids and all that sort of thing. So, it's just something that I've got to manage and something that I've got to deal with now. So, and with that being said, it's just given me, it's given me a little bit more clarity as well in terms of living in the present. And we hear this all the time, and it's such a cliche, like people say, YOLO, you only live once, and and you do. But I don't know, since getting this diagnosis, and even since that realisation that something could happen, it's nearly put a bit of a ticking timer in my mind, being like, if I do, like, if something happens to me within a year, within 5 years, 10 or 20, like, I want to make sure that I live every day the best I can, and I do everything I can for my kids, with my kids and my family that I can. So it's nearly given me more of a reason to live bigger and better, but just more than I was, if that makes sense. So it's left me with a bit of a funny mindset of just wanting to be more present, just live a bit more than what I'm living, and do as much as I can while I can, with my family.
I mean, once again, man, it sounds like a very, very conscious way of approaching life and focusing on what you have and appreciating it for it exactly being there and what it is.
Yeah, thanks heaps, man. Thanks. Trying my best.
Sounds like you're doing an amazing job, man. Well done. I think this is a beautiful little segue at this moment. I'd like to say thank you so much for sharing your story. And this brings us to the point of the podcast where we go into your medicine. So, reflecting back on your personal journey, what do you feel has been your greatest medicine or greatest teaching within that story?
The biggest medicine that I've got from my own personal journey, I would say, would be doing the things that fill my cup up and recognising what they are. And for me, before my family and before, like, I've always had my family with my brothers and sister and my dad and everything, but I would say doing things that fill my cup up in regards to like my fishing and getting out on country and hunting and camping and hiking, like those things that are positive in my life they've pulled me through some pretty difficult times when I needed time to reflect. And in a lot of the circumstances of my life where I've had some moments like, when I had to really take accountability, I was out fishing for a barramundi up in Darwin when I had that moment. So I think one of the best medicines that I've had, and I actively do with, I do it now, I do it with my son all the time, is, we'll go fishing and we'll go hunting together. Like, it's something that I've always done, and it's something that I really try and actively implement into my family as well. Is just getting out and being grounded and surrounded with nature. I think nature's great. Nature's great medicine.
It sure is, my man. Very well said, and thank you once again for sharing your story and the truth within that powerful medicine.
Thanks heaps, man. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. You're also doing some really beautiful work at the moment with this perspective shift and giving back and within your offers. Would you like to share what's happening in your world in that regard at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. Based off everything that's happened, and especially with my latest diagnosis with the cancer going to that next little stage, I have created a public speaking platform to share my story to native youth and whoever wants to hear it, just in hopes that it can genuinely help some people, and some of the lessons and the perspectives that have helped me get through adversity or get through to success. I just hope that can genuinely make a difference in somebody's life. And I often think back to my old footy trainer in school that just made that big difference on that moment that he took the time to help me, and I just want to be that person to help other people as well. And if my time comes whenever it comes, I just want to know that I did everything that I could in the time that I was here to not only help my family and my kids, but also leave a positive impact on other people as well. So that's kind of where it's come from. And it's early days, so it's still in the grassroots stage, but I'm really excited to get out there and to spread some positive message.
Wonderful, man. Beautiful testament after what would be incredibly humbling experience, and to be able to come out on top and share your magic and medicine with the world is a testament to who you are and what you bring. So thank you very much.
Thank you, man, and likewise to yourself with this space and in the mental health. Need more people like yourself out there as well. So well done to you.
Beautiful, man. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thanks heaps, mate. Appreciate it.
Wow, what a beautiful story from Matty. I mean, I just imagine growing up on country and how that freedom of connecting with the land, but also the adventurous side of like the fishing and the hunting and sleeping under the stars with the fire would have just been so wholesome for an experience growing up, and then to have left home at such a young age, 12, like thinking back at 12 years old and how much you didn't even know because you're 12 years old, but having to adjust to that separation of home life, family life, and then integrate into a school system, but then the natural kind of hierarchy and dynamics that school plays out. So beautiful to hear that Maddie had these mentors along the way, and importantly the kind of crossroad moments, because it's not really very often that one gets shown two potential possibilities of pathways in life, and for it to be so resonating that it actually grounds a person into a new conviction and walk of life, and how that really was, as Maddie described, not only the blueprint to his life, but that was early development of that foundational system that was very evident and clearly played out for those really pivotal points in his life. And it was quite interesting. I mean, you know, I could only imagine what it would be like 21 years old and playing professional anything would be quite interesting. I mean, I imagine there's a lot to take on and a lot to navigate. I think everybody would easily think that there's more pros and cons, but I don't know. I think that exposure is a big thing, and it, as Maddie said, like there was a very steep learning curve, and steep also means, in my perspective, is pace. It's going very fast. You know, there can be a steep descent or a steep ascent, but it's still, there's a lot of speed that's happening at a time. A lot of things are moving, a lot of things are changing, and there's almost reflections that I'm sure you would be very hard to keep up with. And to head over to New Zealand once again, reconnect with nature, find grounding, and ultimately, as May said, not get to the level in which he was aiming for, but learning so much in that process. And I think that that's so beautiful too, because we learn our lessons in different ways and shapes and forms, and these are the parts that really stood out for me. And then ultimately to continue and find this connection in the work that you're doing at such a young age, I mean, speaks very much into Maddie's personality and the space that he holds for others, and to head up to the Kimberley and that absolutely magical part of the world, and to be offering the same guidance and support. Because I think that what stood out so much for me and was so rich was when a person has felt what support means and what support actually can do to somebody's life in a positive way, I think it leaves this incredible hallmark on a person. And it does not surprise me that Maddie is the way that he is, the person he is, and does what he does, giving back and offering, because he felt that in real time and he knows the difference that it made. And then, I mean, how exciting to go on a reality TV show alone. It's probably one of the most wild reality TV shows out there, really, and all the logistics. I had no idea that how much sacrifice there would be. I mean, it makes sense now, but of course, like, you've got to put it all on the line. Like, it was its own gamble, and then to be dropped out there. And I love that two-sided coin moment where to come back, reunite with Maddie's family, and then in a couple of weeks to reno the caravan and just spend the most beautiful quality time with his family. And that enriching truth that is clearly evident in Matt's value system, which is just really, really inspiring and very beautiful. And I mean, to hear that story about returning back to football and the intentions within it, and it was really based, from what I heard, around community and the social side and that feeling of unity, with the connectedness within that. And then to have something like that experience happen, lying in bed, and then I could only imagine sitting there in the hospital bed before the surgery with the knowing that you might not come out the same person, and how much family means to a guy like Matty, and all the little things that he might not be able to do. I think that would be incredibly hard to even process, and it's a testament to him and that experience, and to not only overcome that hurdle, but then on the last day, on the day that he was leaving, to be dealt that information and those cards of cancer. I mean, it's even just trying to reflect from this point of view, it's incredibly challenging to even comprehend. And you know, Matty said it himself, he wasn't a praying man, but he was then, and how interesting and beautiful that was to then also really take time to see and focus on what he had as opposed to what he didn't. And that perspective shift, and how deeply profound that perspective shift was. You know, when he was sharing, I could imagine those strings being reattached. And it's not very often in one person's life that they are the ones who consciously get to reattach those strings. And how do they want them to look? And how do they want them to feel? And to navigate all of that as a collective, navigate it as a family, navigate it as an individual, and to not only be able to overcome it, but for it to have left such a positive mark and impact on an individual just says, once again, so much about Matty as an individual, and also the family unit and everything that he values within that. So I'm so proud to be able to share this story, because I really noticed through that, the pattern, that blueprint, and the way that a guy like Matty connects to nature, and he knows what is nourishing for him and his soul, and knows how to manage things, and knows how to put himself on the right paths and the right track, and continue and gain that momentum and compound that into a positive experience that he has, that he calls life. I think it's a testament, and I think it's really beautifully walked this path. And for him to be doing the offerings that he's doing, and sharing his story, and going to schools, and putting himself out with this knowledge and wisdom and the importance of perspective, I think is very honourable work. So I thank Matty gratefully, because of not only sharing his story, but also what he's overcome, and him as an individual, and how he shows up for himself and his family. I think it's very, very beautiful. So thank you. So there you have it. The story of how one man's crossroad adventures brought him to his own blueprint knowing of how to reset, refocus, and give back to the people around him. Head over to Burnt River Project and give this man and his work a follow. If you like the podcast and you haven't done so already, please support the channel by either liking, subscribing, rating, or just telling a friend. Those little things go a very long way. I work guiding men back on track. So if you feel like something's a little off in your life, then head over to plumplanes.com or at plum_planes_collective and book in for a free call, as I'm always here for a chat. My name is Taylor Jardine, and this is Your Story, Your Medicine. Thank you for taking the time to listen.